Hello, everybody, and welcome back to now episode 7 of the I'm No Expert podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Peterson. I know it's been a while. I'm looking at my computer here, and it's been about 2 months since we've had one of these interviews. We have had a bonus episode since then, so please go check that out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or on YouTube. You can listen to a bonus episode that I did with the head of School of Emmanuel Christian School, Miss Rachel Frecka, on School Choice. It's about 10 minutes. Come on, during your lunch break, just check it out. Larry McCollum is sitting right here. He's checked it out, and so he thinks it's great. So don't take my word for it. Take his word for it. Today we have a really special guest. Speaking of Miss Rachel Frecka, today we have Andy Frecka, Miss Frecka's husband. Andy, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
I'm really excited to have you in here today, man. This is going to be a very interesting interview because I can't really see Andy, but you can see both of us. So that's all that matters. But I'm going to be kind of talking over my computer screen here. Andy has led a very unique and interesting life. He has spent, besides the last 2 years, he spent 23 years. 23 years, is that right, Andy?
23 years.
23 years living in Russia with his family. You guys heard a little bit about that when we spoke to Ms. Frecka. But today we're going to hear from Andy, and we're going to hear a little bit about his media background and how that's translated into some very exciting things that he's doing here in the United States. So, Andy, how you doing today, man? Thank you for coming on.
I couldn't be any better. I was up late last night playing pickleball. So if I seem a little sleepy, it has nothing to do with the amazing podcast. It has to do with my amazing lobs and dinks into the middle of the night last night.
I appreciate that. That's high praise coming from you, man.
Yeah.
And pickleball has taken the El Paso community by storm. Man, yeah, it's something else.
It's great because it doesn't require really much skill at all. You plateau pretty quick. And as you can see, I'm not in the greatest of physical form, but I can dominate on the pickleball courts.
Yeah. Hey, not a whole lot of physical movement, man. That's a sport that I need to get into.
Yeah.
I've been in athletics for 6 years now, and I think I'm going to just leave it up to Larry because I'm obviously not the sports-oriented type, but Larry can be. So we'll leave it up to Larry.
Yeah, sometimes I see Larry walking across the gym floor, and I'm like, that guy. I would like to be in that physical shape.
I know.
Someday.
I say it to myself all the time. Oh, man. Anyways, man. Well, hey, so before we got on this podcast episode right now, we spent a little bit of time doing a tour and an interview of the local radio station KELP.
Right.
And it's something that you are going to be involved with going forward. Mm-hmm. You're going to be doing some really good work there. Hopefully, good Lord willing.
We hope, yes.
Yes, exactly.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. And we're going to get into that here in a second. But man, hey, Andy, I'm just going to kind of let you run with it. I know you've been in media, so you know how this works, man. Just tell me and our listeners a little bit about yourself. And yeah, man, they want to get to know you.
Yeah, okay. So I grew up in the state that has the most presidents. Came from that state. It's the Hall of Fame state. I mean, you look back over the years, Rutherford B. Hayes was born there, President Garfield, McKinley, Taft, really all of the presidents that we know nothing about. And it does have the greatest both college and NFL team.
Oh. Yeah,
so so it's the heart of it all, the Buckeye State. So I grew up in Ohio.
Oh.
And so
greatest NFL team?
Yeah, yes.
The Bengals, right?
Oh, come on. Hey, now. Don't make me walk out on this interview right now. Paul Brown started both of those teams. One of them turned out really well, the Browns, and the other, I don't know what to think of that.
Clearly fallen into mediocrity.
Yeah. Obviously. So anyway, I grew up in Ohio. Long story short, after high school, I was looking at what I was going to do, and I really wanted to find out what life was about. And I'm a little afraid to say this on this podcast in this educational institution, but I had no interest in college at all. And so, unlike my wife, who loves learning. It's and especially in a formal setting, she loves it. So I decided I was going to go find myself, which sounds both really smart and really dumb at the same time. And so I was going to go become a drifter and go find myself. And around that time, someone had told me about this missionary training school, and I was thinking about it, and I was kind of not sure because I wanted to go find myself. Right. And I read this book that you could hear the voice of God. And growing up in the church, that was something we were never taught. Mm-hmm. And it kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I should try that. Mm-hmm. And I was a Christian. I was just never heard this, or maybe I was just in my own zone and never really heard it being said. But one of the things the book said is sometimes God will speak a scripture to you and you open it up. And I just want to be clear, this is the only time this has ever happened to me. But I was like, oh, that's cool. I should totally do that. Yeah. And so God, like if you want to say something to me about going and becoming a drifter and finding myself.
Show me right now.
Yeah. And Matthew 10:39 comes in my mind. So I'm like, I wonder what that is. And I open it up and look, and it says, whoever finds his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And that's when I had to go tell my friends we weren't going to buy a van and just travel around the United States.
Your plans have changed?
Yeah. And so I totally became 100% interested in, now I'm going to go give my life to God. I'm going to go be a missionary. So I bought a one-way plane ticket because I didn't know if I was coming back. I was like super serious. I was 18 years old. I bought a one-way plane ticket to East Texas, Lindale, outside of Tyler, where I did my mission training school. And while I was there, we were supposed to go on an outreach, and there were 4 options. One was Native Americans, one was South Africa, and the other 2 were China and Russia. And I was praying about where to go, and I couldn't really understand. And so finally I decided, well, I've already been to America. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to South Africa. That seems like really warm and easy and nice on the beach. I want to be like totally like gung-ho, all in.
You want to be in the thick of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I decided I was going to go to China. And the morning came where they were asking us where we thought we were supposed to go, and they're going around the room, and they come to me, and I'm like, China. And then they say, Andy, where are you going? I said, Russia. And I'm like, why did I just say that? And so, long story short, 23 years it's been in Russia.
Off of a mistake.
Yeah. But no, to be serious, we went to Siberia, and it was the middle. It was the middle of the winter.
My gosh! So you got thrown into the worst of it.
It was 40 below zero. It was wild. But I loved everything about it. Loved the people. Loved the conversations I was having. What I was learning, just seeing. And I was like, right then at 18, like I'm going to go spend the rest of my life in Russia. And it was quite a journey to get there. It took 3.5 years, but then right in January of '99 is when I moved to Russia. And spent 23 years there. First 11 years were in a city. So do you know where Poland is?
Yeah, I can kind of picture it on a map.
Yeah. That city's nowhere near there. So it's sorry. It's a city called Perm, but it's 1 million people. Okay. It's about a 2-hour flight north and east of Moscow. Okay. Right on the edge of Siberia. So we spent 11 years there. We started kind of this mission that was doing a lot of cool things actually all over. It was a ton of fun, and then really felt that the biggest challenge in Russia was Moscow. And so we lived in Moscow for 12 years. That's where our kids grew up. Just an amazing world-class city, a metro area of 20 million people. Yeah. You know, I think it's 250 subway stations. Wow. Super clean, you know. Europe's largest mall, which I'm not into malls, but just
knowing that was within walking distance.
Yeah, very cosmopolitan. So we were there, and we were doing work like working with the homeless, working with the Roma people, which is Gypsy. Okay. So doing a lot of work with them, then work around Russia, all over, and then we were helping girls get out of the trafficking. I stopped doing that after a masked policeman put a gun to the back of my head. But I was doing that for a while. But
Wow.
yeah. So just like a lot of fun stuff, kind of like a wild life.
You just
know.
went from having a gun put to your head
Yeah.
to a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Keeps it real, clearly.
Yeah. Well, the funniest thing about that was, long story short, I was spread
as much as you can share.
Yeah. I was spread eagle up against the van,
Uh-huh.
and this policeman has the gun up, and I can feel it, and he's yelling in my ear.
Yeah.
And
do you
he has-
understand him at this point? Like, were you speaking enough Russian to understand what he's saying?
Oh, I'm fluent in Russian.
Okay.
But I couldn't understand what he was trying to tell me.
Right.
And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I'm like, like sometimes I'm not really concerned about my level of comprehension. But right here, right now, like I totally want to understand what this guy's telling me. Because
English class back in high school, don't really care.
Yeah.
But right now.
Yeah. And so then I'm like, what is going on? And then it hit me. Like this young man who was doing his job, he his inner school child kind of came up in that moment because he figured out I was an American, and he was practicing English phrases into my ear, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. So like in Russian, I was like, "Я вас не понял." Like I don't get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then he began yelling in Russian. It's like, okay, now we're communicating. We'll figure this out.
Now I'll do what you want me to do.
But
that is a bad time for miscommunication, man.
yeah. So no, it's really horrible.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the middle of all this, part of what I was saying was really wanting Russians to take on leadership of the mission. So I was kind of trying to step back a little bit. And the other part is, there are certain parts of society that you are not able to influence as a traditional missionary.
Right.
And so I began looking at, 80% of the money in Russia is the number that's thrown out is in the city of Moscow.
Wow.
And so like, how do you reach these people in these high rise office buildings? How do you reach the people driving around in, really nice cars? And, they'll never darken the door of a church, like how do you reach out to these people? And so, it was interesting just that God began to open up some different doors. And one of those was I started a real estate agency. How much does it cost? 93 square meters, recently renovated. That's about 990 square feet. A place where you can showcase your products or services in in one of the hottest real estate markets in the world.
So it's going to be more high-end real estate, I guess?
Yeah, and a lot of it was for expats.
Okay.
Like oil executives or professional hockey players, like guys who didn't make it into the NHL or were after their NHL career.
Time to go to Russia.
Yeah. And so I would help them with all their getting in.
And I mean, no, I want to commend you for that because, obviously reaching the lost amongst the poorest of the poor and everything like that is very admirable. But there are so many lost people who, because they have it all, like you said, they're never going to darken the doorway of a church. They're never they have it all.
Right.
Why do they need anything else? And those people need Christ just as much as the next person. So
Right.
I commend you for that. I want to point that out specifically. So hey, that's awesome.
I mean, the kingdom of God is any place where God is king, and really, when we pray that His kingdom come, that His will be done, it's like we have to think outside of the location that we gather on Sundays. So there was the real estate agency. Was doing some. We had a small trucking company. Then I was looking around at how can the Russians really support themselves if they're in ministry, and one of the ideas that came to mind was farming. And so we had a little farm. We had 3,000 head of quail.
Wow. There you go. It's something.
And about 200 meat chickens at a time. And just learning how that could be implemented in other areas. It was implemented in the Far East later on. of Russia. But so just doing all these different things, and the other part of that is, I think it's real. I don't want to say easy, but it's not unusual for a missionary to be trained how to speak the word, and he goes to another country. He goes with his program. He goes with the right words, but the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so how do we live that word in our lives? Mm-hmm. And so that was the challenge, is how do we live like Russians, in a way that they'll see a difference? How does the word not just become something that we can preach from a stage in a controlled setting, but something that's fully a part of our lives? And so that's kind of what we were doing. In the middle of all that, for a while, I was co-hosting a Christian radio show in the mornings. It was actually a great show. Mm-hmm. I started a YouTube channel where I was traveling around Russia with a Russian friend, and we were just basically showing Russia to Russians, showing them some of the beauty of their own country, because so often they would compare themselves to other countries and not see the beauty of their own country. Yeah. And maybe there's a little bit of insecurity there that's played out even in more severe terms than we'd like.
Possibly.
Yeah, but that was kind of what we wanted to do. And so we just traveled all over Russia, and we would choose kind of more obscure places. Mm-hmm.
Off the beaten path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like instead of going to Chicago, we go to Gary, Indiana.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone from Gary, Indiana who might be watching
this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, but just something that's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what we were doing. And because of that, I started getting invited onto Russian political talk shows, mm-hmm. Which it was interesting that the first time I was invited, I didn't go. And afterwards, I just felt this real strong conviction. And it was kind of like God was just saying, I gave you the microphone, you didn't take it. And when you look through Scripture, it's real interesting. And I would love to hear a teaching or a sermon series on this. Mm-hmm. God hates cowardice. God just detests it. And you can see it again and again throughout Scripture. It's like Saul was made king. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that was the highest will of God or not is another question.
He was given that position.
Yeah. And then he's found hiding in the luggage.
Yeah.
And you just see that again and again throughout Scripture. Like it just really, really upsets God when we're cowardly. And that's really what I felt is, I'm handing you this microphone, like you better take it. And so after that, whenever I was invited, I would go. And I was kind of like the American punching bag on Russian political talk shows.
Я считаю, что немножко вот этот вопрос неправильно поставлен. Обыск это или осмотр, закона, незаконно. Потому что это просто очередная пакость, которая не конструктивна в наших отношениях. Вот.
But it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was high adrenaline. One of the shows was it's one of the top channels in Russia. Was played. It was a 3-hour long live show. Wow. And so you had to be at the top of your game the entire time. And every time I go in, I'm like, they're not going to get me. They're not going to get me. I'm going to stay. I'm cool, man.
Cool head.
Yeah, they get me every time. But
like what in their minds, what qualified you to be America's spokesperson on this talk show?
That's a great question. I think my level of expertise in geopolitical world situation was about the same as everyone else on the show. I think it had a lot more to do with they liked the way I spoke Russian, the way I presented myself, and so I did have a little bit of fun with that. So before we were talking now, I did tell you the story of one time they were like, America's not allowing us to do reconnaissance flights over Hawaii. Why is that? And I'm like, oh, I know. Please ask me. And so they give me the microphone, and I'm like, the reason we are no longer allowing reconnaissance flights over Hawaii is so that you don't get jealous.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so, and the microphone was taken away immediately. But there were other times where the more serious subjects came up.
Yeah.
And for example, I was on the National Army channel, which is a big Russian national channel, is the military channel.
That'd be the definition of state television, I guess. That channel specifically.
All of these are state television.
Fair enough, yeah.
But especially the military channel.
Yeah, especially the military channel.
Yeah, and so it was the first time I was on the show. It was a political talk show. And they were talking about what's it like in Russia for foreigners. And they literally asked everyone in the studio except for me, and I was the only foreigner.
And you're like, hold on.
Yeah, I was
I'm the only American here.
I was like, bro, like,
yeah.
And so because of that,
yeah.
And also I could tell how I was seated. I was seated like in a secondary position. I was like, man, I'm just wasting an hour of my life. So my mind wandered off, which is not what I recommend if you're ever, if listen to me right now, if you're ever watching, if you're ever a participant on the Russian military talk show, do not let your mind wander off because they'll catch you. So this was 2018.
Yeah.
This is important to say. And they were talking about Ukraine. And then out of nowhere, they're like, Andy, how will we save Ukraine? And I'm like, what? Like 2018. I mean, I this has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, it's interesting because for the past hour, we've been laughing at Ukraine and making fun of the situation there. I bet you that there's a show going on in Ukraine right now where they're doing the same thing about us. And, you look at, I have friends in Ukraine. I've been there many times. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
Many of you have family there. And it's so easy for us to point the finger at each other. But I'm just remembering what this man wrote like 2,000 years ago, that all have sinned. And that means, what does that mean? That means America has sinned. It means Ukraine has sinned. It means Russia has sinned. And until we start looking at ourselves, this problem will only get worse. And they talked to me after the show. Yeah, but what was funny was like when I was saying it, like the other people on the show were like, "Oh, you're going there," and then after the show they pulled me aside, and I thought they were gonna kind of be upset with me for quoting scripture,
right?
But that wasn't it. They were like, you kind of when you said that, you kind of ruined the vibe.
You killed the mood, Andy.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point, right? And so, but
it's funny though, because like you were in a situation where you weren't paying attention, probably should have been, but like that wasn't you talking.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
that wasn't you that came up with that on the spot.
Oh, it's definitely make a quick prayer,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You do everything you got to do in that moment.
Yeah.
To get it there. But I guess that wasn't the last time they had you on the military channel, at least. They called you back, I guess.
Yeah, they called me back. So, yeah. What I would say is, it's a country with a church history that's over 1,000 years old. You go into some places, particularly in Western Ukraine, where beautiful architecture, high culture, it's struggling. It was struggling financially, particularly in comparison to Russia, and so Russia has always been like Ukraine's our little brother, kind of that kind of relationship. So not a high level of respect is what I could say, but I would love for many Americans to see the world and see what's out there. There's some really, really great people. Different points of view and just beauty that we could learn from, for sure.
Yeah, no, I believe it. And God willing, things can cool down rather quickly, and people can just be a little bit more civil.
Yeah,
communicate, get to know each other a little better. Take those trips, see different parts of the world,
right, without
so much violence, hatred, and vitriol, and everything like that. So, just touching on that one more time, 2021 rolls around, I guess. What is that, February 2021? It was around that time. 22.
Yeah.
22. And things escalate again much further than they did during the Crimea situation, apparently, too.
Yeah.
If you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was interesting because yeah, a lot of the things we'd worked for many years had started to happen. And one of the other things I was doing, as far as media, was I was hosting a prank show on Moscow, one of Moscow's main channels, where I would take foreigners around Moscow on tours and show them things that don't exist. And the Russians thought that was great. And but it was really a cool way to just interact with the city on a pretty broad level, an intense level, really. Because I will say it was a pretty nice show compared to a lot of prank shows that are out there, but a lot of the things that we had prayed for so many years were happening, but I could tell something was up, like something wasn't right. But it was kind of like, well, anytime something happens in Russia, we stay. Because we've been through a lot of stressful situations over the years.
How much worse could it actually get?
Yeah,
but you're saying you felt like a tension?
Yeah, well, I was working on some trade deals out of Russia, and I could tell that for some reason the government was like stopping those at that time, and so I was like, this is weird. Like, what's going on? And then we knew, of course, about the troop buildup on the border with Ukraine. But it was like, surely they're not going to do that. Surely they're not going to do that. But it turned out that the U.S. intelligence was absolutely right, and they did invade Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. At the time, we didn't plan to leave. We thought, well, we'll make it through this as well. We'll just be somehow isolated from the rest of the world. I came home and I was like, I guess we live in Iran now or something like that. But we received actually multiple warnings in a single day, the day after we decided we were going to stay. Kind of like back channel. Yeah, just saying.
Oh, so not just like the standard embassy warning. It was like people.
Yeah, and it was like, just, you got to get out because you're going to be used as leverage.
And that's what I was about to ask you, so when this kind of all unfolds with your media, you were a media personality.
Yeah.
I mean, I think were you approached to once again be the spokesperson for the United States of America in this situation, or
no, because long story short, they were long story short, I quit.
Now, because of this, or was it? I mean,
no, it happened before that.
Okay.
It happened before
that.
that.
But you got out in time, though.
Yeah. And so, who knows what would have happened? We'll never know.
Yeah.
But we left very quickly. I told the kids we're leaving on Saturday. It was a Tuesday.
Wow.
And we got one of the last flights out via Kyrgyzstan, and then on to Turkey and to the States. But a week later, the police were calling me from Moscow on WhatsApp, like, hey, what's up? Like, is this your house? Sending me a picture. I was like, yeah, it looks like it. And then remember the movie Catch Me If You Can?
Yeah.
Yeah, they thought that was hilarious when I said that. But
I'm sure they love that.
Yeah. So anyway.
So you were being looked for, basically. I mean, you.
Yeah. I mean, I'll never know how serious it was. They were starting an investigation. So on me. So anyway, like, we left the farm, like all these work. I was supposed to do another season with the prank show. And as a matter of fact, February of 2022, I had everything set up to get Russian citizenship.
My God.
Yeah. Like we had no plans.
You
of
were
ever
committed.
leaving. Oh yeah. Like this is our life. And so that all changed very quickly.
Yeah.
And ended up in El Paso. Yeah.
Now, did you know where you were going at that time? I mean,
no. I mean, we flew to Ohio because, I mean, like, what could be greater than Ohio?
Yeah, and Ohio's home for you, so you're like,
yeah, and
set up camp here?
it was just cool, just sitting in like this yard in Ohio, and the white-tailed deer are walking through the yard, and I'm like, what just happened? And then Rachel's from El Paso, and it's funny, when I was 17 years old, the day after I graduated from high school, I was doing drifting practice, like to become a drifter. And so I drove with my friend from Ohio to Seattle, and then Seattle down the coast highway to LA. And then we're driving across I-10. This is 1994. And my car's overheating.
Oh gosh.
And so I was like, Sean, I think I read somewhere that if your car's overheating, you should turn on the heater and it'll pull heat off the engine. Well, it was 113 degrees outside.
Oh my god!
And so we're dying. We're dying. The two of us. We're dead, man. You even take off your shirt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then it was like one of these windstorms as we're going through New Mexico and Arizona, and so the car's overheating, the heater's on. Windstorm. All this sand's blowing through the car, and so we roll up the windows.
So you're baking. You're just in an oven baking.
I mean, yeah, totally, 1,000%. We're roasted. And so the funny story is we arrive in El Paso, and it was like, got to get through the city. We got to get out of the desert. And so we stop. I still remember this. We stop at this truck stop on the east side because we're like, got to get out of the city.
Yeah.
And then we'll stop, get some gas and
something to drink.
Yeah. and I go to a payphone and I like call my girlfriend back in Ohio, and I'm like, I'm never coming back to the city ever again. And
God-forsaken land.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, it ended up a few years later. Shortly after, we met Rachel, and then we got married in El Paso a few years later. So I was like, "Oh, that's super funny and ironic, but I'll never live here."
Sure, I got married there, but I'm never going to live here.
Yeah. And so anyway, we didn't know what we were doing. Like, we didn't know if we were going back to Russia. We were hoping things would blow over. And so, like, after Ohio, we're like, oh, we should go to El Paso and see friends and family. And on the way, let's go to Disney World, which was, like, super surreal in the middle of all this. Like, it's a small world after all. And so, anyway, we get out to El Paso. It was like, yeah, like, we have friends. And like, it was like, what's funny about this is kind of like, I don't feel like driving back to Ohio. So... Seems like a lot.
Let's just stay here for a while.
We'll just stay here. So, praise the Lord. We found a manual, found the school, and Jaden and Benny. Shout out to Jaden and Benny if you're watching. Going here and Rachel working here. And I was a little bit lost.
We're going to get into that. Okay. I'm going to pause you. I'm going to stop you right there because let's talk about your time in El Paso. So Miss Frecka got the secondary principal job here rather quickly, and now she's gone on to be the head of school. Yeah. But we're going to hear a little bit about what you did here in your first few years living in the godforsaken town known as El Paso, Texas. And so we'll jump into that. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Hey Warriors, hope you are doing well as you listen to this episode of the I'm No Expert podcast. Today I want to talk specifically to any alumni who might be listening. Emmanuel Christian School is in the process of creating a much needed alumni database so that we can stay in touch with you as you go on to college and into your careers. We also want to be able to offer you guys things in the future, gifts, information about the school, opportunities for you to get involved here at ICS. So if you have the time, stop what you're doing right now, put the show on pause. It's going to be there when you get back, and go to www.emmanuelwarriors.org/alumni and fill out our alumni registration form. It's quick. It's like a minute to fill out, and just submit it. And that way we can reach out to you. We promise we won't flood you with a bunch of emails. We won't flood you with a bunch of phone calls or text messages or anything like that. We just want to keep in touch. So again, go to www.emmanuelwarriors.org/alumni, and we hope to hear from you. As the host of the I'm No Expert podcast, I need to say how thankful and grateful I am to all of you who have decided to take the time to listen. I especially want to thank those who have decided to follow the podcast on Spotify and subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for also leaving reviews and comments. Those are very helpful. That helps me know whether or not I'm providing a quality product.
Some of you may not know that we are on all major social media platforms. You can find us on X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at NoExpertPod. Please like, comment, DM ideas that you may have. But when you have an idea or a topic or a question that you want us to look into, your best way of getting a hold of us is through our email address. That's noexpertpod@emmanuelwarriors.org. That's noexpertpod@IMMANUEL warriors.org. And let me just say, we're really excited about the slate of guests that we have coming up. But the thing is, there's only so many guests out there. So when you provide us with questions, topics, things that you want to hear, things that you want to learn about, that helps me better choose what expert I need to get on the show to answer those topics. So again, find us on all major social media platforms. I gave you our email address. Feel free to reach out to us there. And once again, thank you for being a listener, a follower, subscriber. Be sure to leave a comment and a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even on YouTube. And hope you enjoy the rest of this show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this episode 7 with Andy Frecka, episode 7 of the I'm No Expert podcast. Once again, my apologies. I know it's been a little while since we've done one of these, but this has been a really, really great episode. And, if you're still able to stick with us and listen to it, I know you're going to take a lot away now from this second half of the episode. So, Andy, welcome back. Thank you once again for coming. Have you enjoyed yourself up to this point?
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Good, man. I'm glad. Yeah. We're back from commercial, man. It's not the next episode quite yet. Anyways, so what we were touching on a little bit before is how Andy and his family made their way out of Russia after making it all they knew for the last 23 years of their life. They had to now make their way out of Russia due to the Ukrainian-Russian war that's currently ongoing. They make their way from Ohio to El Paso, a place Andy thought he would never ever come back to, and now they live here. And Rachel, Mrs. Frecka's blessed to get a good job here at Emmanuel Christian School. Andy's kids are going to school. Andy's daughter is in the process of getting married at this time. She's engaged.
Married.
She's married. She's married now, but at the time she was engaged. Yeah. And Andy's oldest son.
Yeah.
Andy's oldest son is working on Christian contemporary music and gospel rap. So everybody's kind of fitting into their niches, getting into their lanes. Except for Andy. Andy's still trying to figure out not now, but at the time, Andy's trying to figure out exactly where he fits in here when it comes to El Paso. So Andy, share a little bit about that for me.
Yeah, so, the only word I've found that could really describe what we felt at that time was kind of like whiplash, like what's going on, a little bit of shock, but it became evident pretty quickly that we weren't going back to Russia, although that was our hope when we had left. And so we're here in El Paso. We prayed, and I kind of joke around about it, but we did pray, and we felt this is the right place to be. But my job was to put food on the table. But I'm now 47. My life experience is pretty unique and not particularly transferable to trades that are in high demand in El Paso. My Russian language or whatever, my understanding of Russian culture just isn't super useful here on the border.
And you're not in the media center of the United States either,
right.
So
yeah, so it just became about putting food on the table for my family, providing. And so I was looking around, what can I do? I actually enjoy sales. I'm weird like that. Because you get to know people, and
some people, they have the personality for it. They can talk to you. They can get you excited about a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. You're a salesman.
Yeah. So I started selling door to door. I can't say exactly what product I was selling, but I was peddling the financial benefits of renewable energy. And I did learn an important Spanish phrase, "Cuánto su recibo de luz," which after that, it was amazing. the homeowner would immediately begin speaking English and ask me to never speak Spanish ever again. And I was actually running one of those teams that just bombards your neighborhoods in the evenings. There were parts I will look back on fondly. My favorite thing was, how long can you talk to a homeowner without them knowing what you're selling? How long can you talk without using the word solar?
You have to make it interesting for yourself. You have to.
Yeah. And they're like, what's this about? Anyway.
It's renewable energy.
Yeah. They're like, is this solar? Yeah. So anyway, I'm coming around from, do you know your neighbors, John and Juanita? They're 15 houses down around the corner. Yeah. So I was just taking a look at their roof, and I thought I'd swing on by. But what was interesting with that is I've met now thousands of people in El Paso over the past 2 years. And it was interesting that the first sale I made was kind of really interesting because it was the first day I was out knocking. It was over 110 degrees outside. And I'm just walking through the heat in Northeast El Paso, and I'm like, what did I do wrong to deserve this? I mean, that's really what I'm thinking. Yeah. And we get into this house. It's this older lady. She's interested. She's ready to buy. And it turns out her family is just completely fallen apart. And her husband had passed away. His kids are taking her to court. And she's just sitting there all alone in Northeast El Paso, just completely. And it's really interesting because in sales, you get to find out about people's lives. And, just put it real in plain words, when you're running people's credit checks, running their credit score, you find out a lot about their lives. And what I began to understand is in America, there's a loneliness epidemic. And I would say particularly, maybe even more so in El Paso than other places. And I would go through these neighborhoods and, I joke around about it, but, 10 minutes of being in a neighborhood, I knew more people in that neighborhood than the people who lived in that neighborhood,
Knew about each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, you would stand there on the street and you would see your best case scenario is the car pulls up, the garage door opens, the car goes in, the garage door closes. They're inside on Netflix. Maybe they'll walk their dog. There's not that human interaction that we've been created to have. Mm-hmm. And I just saw that again and again. And, after the COVID-19 epidemic, a lot of people are working from home. Mm-hmm. So it's
even more isolated.
Yeah, even more isolated. Yeah. So it's DoorDash, it's deliveries of groceries, Netflix, work from home. And that's not how we were created to live. Right.
And I'm going to pause you for a second because it's important. But you tell me, because you guys were still in Russia when COVID started.
Yeah.
Tell me if it was like this for you guys or it might have been different. But there was like the first 3-week period right when COVID hit where everybody was outside. Like everybody was outside walking on their bikes. At least that was my experience here in El Paso. And it was like for just 3 weeks, people were interacting like they used to. Mm. And by like they used to, I mean back before Netflix was a thing and back before cell phones or maybe even a thing. Yeah. And it was special. And then all of a sudden, those 3 weeks were over and we were back to our to our little lives.
That's not what happened in Russia, but that sounds great.
Well, anyways, it made me think about that. I was going to say if COVID brought one good thing, it was 3 weeks of people socializing.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is, I believe God cares about urban planning. I believe He cares about architecture. Mm-hmm. United States is an automobile culture, and that also reduces our interaction with other human beings. Mm-hmm. And, I was just observing this over the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is Rachel, who's, she's known here as Mrs. Frecka at home. She's just Rachel, her mom. Mm-hmm. But she's a better person than I am. And and she came to me and she's like, I feel God gave me this verse. And it was Jeremiah 29, and it's when you go to the city that you've been exiled to, which spoke to me because I felt like we were exiled. And it says, build homes, plant gardens, give your sons and daughters in marriage. Basically, the message there is you're going to be here for a while, so live your full life. Is what I understood, at least for us. And so we kind of did those things, through the grace of God. It's a miracle. We bought a house. Our daughter was married. We're planting some some flowers. It's like, but
got the garden covered.
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of like, we're here, so we do these things. Yeah. So that's kind of the big deal in that. But the second part says, and seek the welfare of the city that you've been exiled to, and pray, Lord, on its behalf, for the welfare of that city is your welfare. And I just really felt, God began to speak to me about El Paso because, you jokingly said God-forsaken city, and you look at it and it's not a mistake that this city's here. It's easy for us to say to an individual person, you're not a mistake. But it's also important to look at an urban area and say that and understand that. And we're kind of an island in the middle of the desert. And like I think we talked about at the station, the whole world is looking at El Paso. And what are we going to say to the world about what's happening here?
And you don't think about El Paso as being on the world stage.
Yeah.
But when you look at everything that's going on in the world, the hotbeds of news and of activity, it's what did we say? We said at the station, we said it's Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's Israel, Gaza, and it's the border in the United States right now. And
And I've had friends call me from around the world. Are you safe? Are you okay? Because they're watching the news reports coming out of El Paso.
Yeah.
And so, you look at that. What are we going to say about it? Or are we going to let the national and international news speak for us? And the other part is I taught this for years in missionary training schools around the world, is wherever you are, serve. And now I've had to learn that myself because I kind of had to have an attitude adjustment, maybe a little bit of pruning, but it's kind of like we're here, and El Paso is interesting also. This is not San Francisco. It's not New York City. People don't move here really. It's not a destination city. Usually you're here because your family's here or the government told you to move here.
Those are probably the main two reasons.
Those are probably the main two. And so you look at that and just to understand that it's not by chance, it's not a mistake that you're here. And again, what are we going to do about this city?
Right.
And it's interesting meeting with ministry leaders, church leaders. Some are really excited for the future. Some just see the church in decline. But whatever happens with that is 100% up to us.
Yeah.
Are we going to be praying? Are we going to be seeking God? Or are we just going to accept things for the way they are? And then besides all that, I look at El Paso, Juarez. Being here in the desert it's kind of interesting that I think it forces creativity, and I believe that in prayer that there's going to be some kind of a movement in the arts and entertainment coming out of El Paso, and so it's not just showing hard news from the wall to the world, but God's going to start, especially for young people, start giving them ideas that they can share with the world, and you don't have to go to San Francisco to produce that and send it to the world. We have I've learned from my own children what a great underground film scene there is, independent films, music, and
the talent is it's rich with talent, but that's the thing, what's the saying? If good news sold, You know, that's not what sells, unfortunately. And
Right.
so, bringing that to light, you got your work cut out for you, but you know, God bless you, man, for God putting that on your heart to show some of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's how that all fits into the radio station is, we looked at. I'd heard about it 2 years ago when we first came to El Paso.
KELP, yeah,
KELP, and I did not have the right headspace to take that on at that time, but it kind of came back in prayer 6 months ago and seek the welfare of the city, and I didn't see a better way to seek the welfare of the city than that. And so I do think it's a really cool way to serve the whole city. And I kind of love the fact that I'm here to learn. Yeah. Like I don't know El Paso. Like I know it pretty good because I visited 2,000 homes, probably more. That was me at your door.
You might have met more people than I have when it's all said and done.
Yeah. I mean, and I would love to hear if someone's watching who slammed the door in my face. They're like, oh yeah, that guy. He's relentless.
I'm glad to see you made it.
He's completely impervious to all of my hints that I have no interest in what he's selling. But no, I just look at it and this KELP is a great resource for the kingdom. How can we steward it? How can we develop it? It's been around for 40 years. There's a great foundation. There's a great group of people listening all around the border region. But how can we build on that? And also hand the microphone over to more local voices.
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that I don't have an agenda. Because I don't,
because you're coming into it blind.
You're
exactly.
Just like,
I'm here to learn.
Exactly.
So I mean, and going back to the stewardship and the development of the station itself, talk to me a little bit how you ended up getting involved in KELP. I know you shared a little bit on an interview that you had with KELP just a few weeks ago, but what was that? What was that whole process for you? Is to gain involved with the station?
So the founder Arnie McClatchy, he founded the station 40 years ago. He passed away 6 years ago. His wife, his widow, Pam McClatchy, has kind of kept the station afloat these past 6 years. And she's been looking for who's going to take over. I just want to say, again, the staff at the station and Pam have done a fantastic job of keeping it going. But there is the need to, either you're dying or you're growing. And so it just needs that extra push to grow. And so just seeing that and hearing about it, it just came to mind in prayer. I went to a friend, said, hey, let's do this together. And he prayed about, he was like, I've been praying about that too. We gathered a group of people that we trusted to pray with, and we were expecting pushback, and we were kind of disappointed because there was zero pushback. It's kind of like we were hoping to like spar a little bit.
Nobody has anything to say about this. Like
they're like, that sounds amazing. You should definitely do that.
Yeah.
And so that was basically it. So there is this whole process we're going through right now with the transition. It's a lot of paperwork. But that's where we're at right now, and with God's help, in a few months it'll be finalized, and we'll be able to fully move things forward.
That's awesome, man. So everybody listening or watching, you've already seen the tour that we took of KELP. Special shout out to Audie and Jaden for helping us out with some camera work. I have not seen their camera work yet, so I hope it's good. I'm holding you guys accountable to that. I'm sure it will be. But you guys have already seen a bit of the tour and some of the stuff that Andy shared. Andy, just give me a few more details, as many as you can, really, about the development. What's your vision? What's your goal? What maybe some of the new programs you might want to introduce? Talk a little bit about the programs that are currently there, because I know people are very passionate about the programs.
It's been, so I grew up listening to Christian radio.
Yeah.
And so to me it was like really normal, and I even knew pretty much all the names that were on KELP.
It was funny. I kind of bragged for a second because I was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of an old head. I know some of these people here on the poster. I think I can only name 2, but
Right.
I know who Chuck Smith is. I know who Dr. Dobson is. I know
Billy
who
Graham.
I know who Billy Graham is. I know who John MacArthur is.
Yeah.
Even though I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, apparently I couldn't pick him out on the screen. But yeah. I mean, those are great Christian leaders and voices.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to someone, and they're like, you could almost get like a seminary degree just by listening faithful to KELP. Yeah, no, and it's teaching at a very high level.
Absolutely.
And so we absolutely will keep that. We're committed to biblical teaching and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that won't change. And we're I talked about the 915 Pray initiative. The one radical thing is we're going to add one praise song every morning.
Hey,
but yeah, which will be great. But there's no plan to do music. Other stations do that great, and as does Apple Music and Spotify.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so,
but this is your lane.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're sticking to it.
Exactly. So what we really want to do is, when I look at El Paso, I really see a community that's splintered, and I'm going to be a boomer right now, but I think that a lot of the loneliness epidemic in America is due to media, and particularly things like Netflix, where media is separating us. And it's weird, like when you're watching Netflix, which I have.
I contribute to the conglomerate that is Netflix.
Yeah, it's like there's a show for every single person in America.
Yep.
And it's so we're being pulled apart. So how can the station pull people together? Because that should be kingdom media, should be pulling people together, including in real life, IRL. How are we going to do this? So that's part of the vision, just becoming a part of the community. I don't even know exactly how that's going to happen yet, honestly. The other is, we want to see more local voices, pastors doing sermons.
Yeah.
We want to be interviewing more local people. I had a pastor at the station this morning who wants to go out and just see what all these ministries are doing and just start sending in reports.
Okay.
And want to see, like right now, there's a lot of between programs. There's a lot of like they're called PSAs, public service announcements, for ministries that are doing great things. However, it has nothing to do with El Paso. So it'd be great to see more
showcasing and highlighting of local ministries. Exactly,
that people can get involved with.
Yeah,
like for example, the easy one that comes to mind is Casas por Cristo.
Right.
Let's all go build a house. Help someone out in Juarez or whatever the case may be. And that's not to take down any of those national ministries, but what can we be doing locally?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the vision. We're going to be using the website more and more with different blogs too.
I saw you guys have renovated your website.
Yeah.
It looks sharp.
Yeah. It's super simple, but it's the design's a lot more updated.
Yeah.
So just wanting to share about community events, what's going on out there, and it doesn't have to be our church is having this at this time.
Yeah.
It could be there's a garden festival, like for gardening, like that's God cares about gardening. He told us to plant gardens when we're exiled. So, like
it's in there.
Yeah. And just for us to live this full life in the city and be investing in the city. I'm hoping to bring in city leaders for interviews, see what their view is on the church in El Paso.
That's bold, Andy.
Yeah. So
we mentioned it when we were sitting there in the studio. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to get into politics, but I was like, hey man, you're talking religion, you're talking Christianity, might as well talk politics too.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and but again, it's keeping pretty much all this the same programming. A lot of the programs repeat. And so that actually opens up a spot for us.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
I know there's a word for today in the morning and in the afternoon.
yeah.
There's a few different ones that do
Right.
that too.
Yeah, so that does create opportunity. And again, how can we use this to share what is happening here with the church with around the world? Because again, the world's looking at us. Everyone has their opinion of what's going on at the border, but what do we as a church in the borderland have to say about what's happening here?
I think, and I was sharing this with Rachel earlier because in the preparation for this whole interview and everything, I was talking to her a little bit too, and it sounds like you want to keep the Christian radio station what it is. You just want to round it out. You want to show that our faith permeates and gets into every bit of our life. Like you said, whether it's just a simple gardening club, whether it's political, whatever it is, our faith is supposed to guide our actions and everything. And it sounds like you just want to make it a well-rounded radio station to cover all these different things.
Yeah, I mean, God cares about architecture.
Yeah.
Like I said, God cares about urban planning. There are all these parts of society. He cares about the economy,
Health.
Absolutely. There's some really kingdom-minded doctors in El Paso that I'm hoping will come in and share what's going on with healthcare. It's exciting. And also just looking for people who are kind of patriots of the borderland, who are excited to be here, who can point out these parts of the city, because a lot of the people who came here not of their own free will can just kind of, I'm doing my time. But for those of us who are part of the church, we need to be using the time that we've been given here on earth 100% for his kingdom. So hearing those voices and being encouraged to just become a part of the community.
Absolutely. So Andy, let us know the radio, the station. Where do we got to turn our dial to?
So I'm going to give you a bunch of different options.
All right,
so
I'll throw them down. I'll throw them down somewhere on here.
Yeah. So it's in El Paso. It's 1590 AM.
Okay.
95.9 FM. On the far west edge of El Paso, 89.3 starts.
Okay.
And it goes almost to Hatch.
Okay. Wow. So maybe like Santa Teresa, Canantillo.
And that's a full service station.
Okay.
89.3 FM. And then we do have we do have streaming on the website.
Okay.
And that's really where I would invite people to go. Just check it out, see what's going on. You can see the station schedule. You can start to see our first blog posts.
Hey, there you go.
KELPradio.com.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna send you this podcast, man. You can throw it on there too.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Another interview for you to have on there. That's great, man. That's great. Well, again, if for whatever reason you're catching this podcast, or if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that means you didn't watch the tour. You didn't get to hear the tour, at least. So go to YouTube, watch the tour that I took with Andy around KELP. And we kind of get to know the station. Andy shares a little bit more about the developments and some of the new things that they're planning on bringing to the station. Something Andy handed to me while we were in his new office over there at the station is his book called Winter Road: Journey of a Russian Mission. And oh boy, I'm really going to have to zoom in. Cameras are far away here. I'm really going to have to zoom in, but it's right here. I'm going to give it a read. It's not a super long book. But Andy, tell us a little bit about what the book is about, what inspired you to write this book, and how we can get our hands on it.
So we were living in near Siberia, and I was writing our missionary newsletters, and kind of when I first started writing the missionary newsletters, like super spiritual. I the Apostle Paul to the churches scattered in Asia Minor, like whatever.
Yeah.
And then like sometimes something happened, and I have to remember what it was, but something kind of crazy happened, and I'm like, I'm just gonna write that story, like this is what happened, and it wasn't particularly spiritual, or it didn't really have a lot to do with ministry, and I sent it out, this newsletter. and everyone wrote back and absolutely loved it. And I think part of it is just people really want to get a sense of where you're at, who are you interacting with.
Yeah.
Rather than, I'm here at my post, I'm doing my job, please send money. Like it's like, hey, like I'm with these people. These are what the people are like. And of course, pray for us. And so, kind of the newsletter just kind of became story after story, and people just said you need to put that together into a book.
That's what this almost is?
Yeah.
Compilation of
And
your...
so I don't know if we can say this on the podcast, but a lot of people have said that it's good toilet reading because it's just the right length. But it's just like it's edited down, believe it or not.
Yeah.
We over 10 years we wrote more than double that probably.
I love this. I'm looking at it. It's listed like journal entries almost.
Yeah. So those
it's
are
your
just,
actual newsletters.
Yeah, it's actually the newsletters. Over those 10 years of living in Perm. So that's what it is. And I did write 2 other books, but one you'll just have to find on Amazon. I wrote it when I was on lockdown, hadn't left the house for 3 months in COVID-19.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit of a parable. Not everyone understands it, but if someone reads it, just know that I'd been at home for a long time.
Yeah, hey. What's the name of that one? Go ahead and share with us.
Donut Shop.
Donut Shop by Andy Frecka. Okay.
Yeah, and then I wrote another book, which I'm very proud of, but won't be useful to anyone watching. It was a book in Russian on business with foreigners, and it was I'm just proud of this, so I got to flex.
Yeah, there you go. Hey.
But it was featured in Russian Forbes.
Awesome.
And so that was something I was using to just I was speaking at like business seminars around Russia. Mm-hmm. So
that's terrific, man. I'm looking at this. First entry here is May 1st, 1999. The year I was born, Andy. I was born November 1999. Yeah. And it goes all the way to December 16th, 2008. I think that's the last entry you have here. That's awesome. 10 years, almost 10 years of your time in, this would have been Siberia, right?
Yeah, near Siberia.
Near Siberia.
Yeah. That's what I call it. It was cold.
The book is Winter Road, Journey of a Russian Mission by Andy Frecka. Look up Andy Frecka on Amazon because it sounds like he has a donut shop. And if anybody listening to this podcast also speaks Russian, feel free to check out his Russian commentary also.
Yeah, Matryoshka, как вести бизнес с иностранцами.
There you go.
Read that.
Russian Forbes.
Yeah.
Featured on Russian Forbes. Yeah. Man, Andy, it was really, really great to have you. I'm gonna throw up the KELP station listings here again so you guys can check those out. Really excited that you're going to be involved with KELP going into the future. I think you're going to bring in fresh, new vision into that radio station. I personally, I do enjoy several other programs that are already on there myself. I have family that does also. But I do know that you're seeking God's guidance in the growth of that station, and so I applaud you for that, man. Anything else you want to say before we conclude this episode?
Yeah, I said this at the station, but if you missed that part, keep your eyes open for 915 Pray. It'll be at 9:15 every morning on the radio station. We'll also have it featured on social media and so on. But let's start praying together for our region that God has entrusted us with.
That's awesome. And once you guys get your social medias up and running, a little bit more prominent and everything like that, Andy's going to send that info over to me, and I'm going to blast it to the ICS community so you guys can start keeping track of stuff that they're doing, because it's going to be exciting. I really have high hopes for where KELP is headed. So once again, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the tour. It was a lot of fun, man. God bless you. God bless you and your family. Let's keep in touch. Let's do this a little bit more often because, hey, man, you got the media background for it, and I'm no expert. So there you go. So thank you guys for listening to this episode 7 with Andy Frecka. God bless you all, and we'll see you back here when we have another episode.
The I'm No Expert podcast is written, edited, and produced by Aaron Peterson. The theme song is performed and written by Franklin Peak. Special thank you to Emmanuel Christian School for providing us with necessary equipment and support to make this podcast possible.